Tales of the Sacred Sword. This week's tale is about how darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Episode 29. Dancing in the Darkness. The woman twirled in the darkness. Her hair whipped around and slapped her in the face, covering her eyes and impeding her vision. Not that she could see in the darkness anyway. In the silence, you could hear her steady but measured breath. Mere steps away, the man took 4 steps in an erratic but exotic pattern. His arms spread apart, then came back together. He leaned back, then forward, as he took 2 more steps toward the woman, and extended his hand toward her. Not that he could see her in the darkness. In the silence, you could hear his steady but measured breath. Their dance was synchronized like the ebb and flow of the tides. It was perfect. Practiced until perfect. As predictable as the positions of the stars at night. It was a beauty to behold, even though no one could see it, not even the 2 dancers. The woman took 4 more steps. They were different than the man's steps, but just as erratic and exotic. They complemented his movements. She spread her arms wide, then wrapped them around herself and lunged forward, extending 1 arm behind her and 1 arm in front. The 2 dancers clasped hands. A beam of light shot from the heavens and surrounded them. Their personal spotlight from the skies illuminated them. They were the embodiment of youth and beauty. Her silk hair shimmered and swayed. His thighs thrust him about and tensed to carry her weight as he tossed her from side to side. The light expanded until it was at least 20 paces across. At its edges, the sharp divide of darkness. There was no area of faint light, only areas that were brilliantly illuminated and areas of complete darkness. The light expanded more. Huddled around its edges were hundreds of people. As the light expanded, their faces were revealed. Women, children, men, the elderly, were all focused on the 2 dancers. The dance continued. The man moved like water crashing on rocks, the power of his dance spraying emotions over the crowd like ocean mist. The woman weaved around him, like the wind whipping through autumn leaves. The grace of her dance showering the crowd like yellow and red leaves falling from trees. Something approached at the light's edge. Something unnatural and unholy. From all directions, creatures most foul encroached. Some walked. Some crawled. Some slithered. Some ran. All had soulless eyes. The rustle of leaves and the odd snap of a twig were the only sounds heralding their arrival. The creatures congregated en masse at the edge of the darkness, their impassive faces confirming what all in attendance knew. They could not appreciate the dance. For these creatures had no soul, no humanity. Just inches away, the people gathered at the edge of the light, mesmerized by the dance. They were as oblivious to the soulless creatures as the creatures were to the dance. The dancers were as oblivious to everyone else. The power of their dance increased, and the light expanded further. The creatures slid, slipped, and slinked away from the light, for they could no more enter the light than they could appreciate the dance. In a few expertly executed steps, the man and woman moved away from each other. Most would never experience the dance performed to perfection. Those that did could die happy. Some men had slain cities and subdued civilizations in search of such expectations. From the edge of the light, the woman raced towards the man, who stood at the light's center. The onlookers held their breath. While their dance was perfect, the ground on which they performed it was not. The woman's foot caught an exposed root. She fell face first. Although she didn't howl in pain, she did clutch her ankle. Streams of tears ran down her face, while her ankle swelled to the size of a large man's fist. With the dance interrupted, the light contracted. For the first time, the people noticed the soulless creatures a mere step behind them. With panicked faces, the people moved toward the center of the light. With great effort, the woman stood. Her injured foot rested against the calf of her other leg. She made a few flourishes with her arms, and the light held still. The man waited, his body frozen in the pose, his expression worried and grim. The woman stepped forward with her swollen foot and collapsed again. She clutched her ankle, and a tear ran down her face. The light contracted. Panic struck the crowd of onlookers. They moved closer to the dancers, giving the dancers less room than they needed. But the soulless creatures chased the receding light, eager to claim their prize of human flesh. The man scooped the woman in his arms. She wiped the tear from her cheek with her palm, then wrapped her arms around his neck. He twirled in one direction, then another. Between the crowd of onlookers and the creatures behind them, the dancers had little room to perform their art. But they had enough room for a step or two. Still holding the woman, the man stepped to the right, then backward to the left, then forwards, back to the right, and finally forward to the right. It made a star formation, and he repeated it over and over. He smiled at her. The light held still. If it contracted any more, the soulless creatures would have their prize. With her legs incapacitated while the man held her, the woman swayed her arms. She created the same star pattern in synchronization with the man's steps. A smile replaced her tears. With every completion of the star pattern, the light expanded. By the fifth time, the dancers completed the pattern. The light had expanded as far as it had at its peak. It pushed the soulless creatures back with its expansion. By the sixth time, the light was as far as anyone could see, and the creatures were gone from view. At the completion of the seventh pattern, the man lifted the woman higher. The woman wrapped her arms around his neck. They pulled each other together and kissed. The light exploded. It was so brilliant, all had to shield their eyes with their hands. It took several minutes to refocus enough to see anything but blurry spots. With the returned vision came the returned darkness. Although the soulless creatures did not return with it, and they never did again. However, neither did the dancers. If you return to the location of that dance, on that same night of the year, on any given year, you will always see two stars shoot across the sky at the darkest hour of the night. Thank you for listening to this week's episode. I write and record these tales weekly. If you enjoy them, please click the like and subscribe buttons, along with the bell notification, and leave a comment. Thank you.